Hello and welcome to my second video on Islam, and this video is on Muslim religious practices. It's for the AQA GCSE Religious Studies spec, but I'm assuming can be used for all other specs. I should say right from the beginning that this is intended to be a brief revision video and not the sort of comprehensive information that you'll get within your lessons. Right, so the first thing that we're going to look at is the 5 pillars. Now, the 5 pillars are the 5 practices that Muslims believe are core to their belief. They are Shahada, which is the declaration of faith, Salah, which is prayer, Zakat, which is giving to charity, Saum, which is fasting, and Hajj, which is pilgrimage. Now, I should say that alongside these 5, for some Shia Muslims, the 5 pillars are also supplemented by other duties, and these are referred to as the 10 obligatory acts. You need to be aware of that. These include encouraging people to do good, to avoid wrong, and disassociating yourself from enemies of God. When they make the declaration of faith, they also add an extra clause which denotes their belief that Ali is an imam. Right, so let's have a look at these individually. The first is Salah, and Salah is the requirement to pray 5 times per day. The Quran instructs Muslims that they should be spiritually clean before performing prayer, and so they should undertake a process of ritual cleansing called wudu. Prayers should also be in the direction of Mecca, and to assist with that, all mosques have a mihrab, which is basically a niche within a wall. So if you don't know what a niche is, it's just a hollowed out section. It's within the Qibla wall, which gives the exact direction of Mecca. Now, the act of prayer itself is also made up of some actions or recitations, and they're called rak'ah. This also includes prostration, where basically you kneel and submit yourself to God by allowing your elbows and your nose and forehead to touch the ground. The midday prayer or Juma prayer on Friday is regarded as especially important, and it requires that all men attend mosque at midday. Okay, so on to the next one, which is Saum. The 9th month of the Islamic calendar is Ramadan, and I know that at the time of recording this, Ramadan is taking place. And it's considered to be the most important to Muslims as it marks the period when the Quran began to be revealed by Muhammad, peace be upon him. It's during this month that Muslims practice Saum or fasting. Now, during the second half of Ramadan, the Night of Power takes place. This marks the date on which God's revelation began to take place. Now, it's not an exact date because that's not known, but the Quran states that worship at this time is worth 1,000 months of prayer. So, like most religions, Islam recommends that people give to charity, or obliges people to give to charity, I should say. Now, the idea of giving to charity is called Zakat, and it's fundamental to Muslims as they believe that everything has been given to them from God. Now, Muslims are also encouraged to give their time to help others, and this is called Sadaqah. In terms of giving, Muslims are required to give 2.5% of their savings. So this is 2.5% of anything over and above the cost of bills, etc., things like that. The Quran instructs Muslims as to who should receive this money, but you can imagine that it's general people in poverty or who are travelling and perhaps need assistance, that kind of thing. For Shia Muslims, it's slightly different. 20% of their excess income or earnings should be given to charity, and this is known as gums. Right, so on to one of the most important of the pillars, because it's an obligation to undertake it at least once in your life, and that's Hajj. So basically, Hajj is a pilgrimage or religious journey to Mecca, which is the holiest place in Islam. And alongside Mecca being the holiest place in Islam, the holiest of shrines is there, and it's called the Kaaba. This is where God ordered Abraham to build a shrine to him. Hajj is, however, just more than a visit, and there are rituals that are required to be performed whilst you're there. Now, I haven't detailed those, and that's something that perhaps you should look into yourself. Muslims who have completed Hajj are referred to as Haji, and it's a significant event for them. It basically shows their commitment, spiritual awareness, equality, and strengthens their faith. Now, something that perhaps is often misunderstood is jihad. And jihad describes the struggle by Muslims against evil. There are two elements to jihad: greater and lesser jihad. Greater jihad describes the personal struggles of Muslims to live life in accordance with their faith and observe the five pillars of Islam. Lesser jihad describes a Muslim commitment to defending their faith. This should include holy war, and you also have that notion of holy war within Christianity, but it doesn't sanction terrorism. For holy war to take place, certain criteria must be followed, such as being a last resort. And I can't emphasize enough that, as I say, it does not sanction terrorism at all. Okay, in terms of festivals, there are two major festivals within the Muslim calendar: the festivals of Eid ul-Fitr and Eid ul-Adha. And they're the two, as I say, major festivals in the calendar. And let's have a look at each of them in turn. So Eid al-Fitr marks the ending of the month of Ramadan and is celebrated by special prayers, meals, and the exchange of presents and cards. Eid ul-Adha commemorates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son in obedience to God. It begins with prayers and the sacrifice of an animal. In Britain, that would be illegal, so it's actually the collecting of an animal from a local slaughterhouse which has been killed in accordance with Islamic law. The meat will then be shared, and usually amongst friends, family, the community, and also to charity. So the last festival that I'm going to mention is the festival of Ashura, and you need to be aware of this because it is commemorated by one Muslim group, but not necessarily another. So the festival or day of Ashura is a major Shia festival. It's also recognised by Sunni Muslims, but for them it's not obligatory. For Shia Muslims, it reflects a day of sadness. It commemorates a massacre at Karbala in Iraq, and for some Shia Muslims, this act of remembrance includes beating themselves with chains or cutting themselves, although these practices have sometimes been condemned. For Sunni Muslims, the day is not as significant and is not obligatory to observe. However, some will fast and give money to charity or prayer. So as I say, I hope this video has been helpful and allows you to revise for the forthcoming exam.